What's good, folks? Family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth to another episode of Disguise Coverage, the only podcast that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin and is presented by the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. That is One Pie Pizza. Find the online menu in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you are listening to this show on. I am your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2 underscores ANT. Find me on Blue Sky at proant. No underscores there, just PROANT. In this episode of Disguise Coverage, we will be diving into the Buffalo Bills free agency rankings and priorities in terms of which position groups need to be towards the top of the priority list, which players in those position groups, the hows and the whys behind it all. If you did not know, free agency is roughly about a week away. Next Monday, we'll start to get news starting at noon of all the deals that are coming through. Nothing is official until Wednesday at 4 o'clock, but next Monday, the bullets will start flying in terms of deals that are going down, who's signing where, for how much, the hows and whys, and all the happening. So with that being said, I figured this episode kind of set us off into the sunset regarding free agency priorities and all of those things. As we go through in this episode, as RJ says, free agency came up extra quick. That is true. Oh, great comment here from Joe. Joe says, I would like them to sign the player with the best cheese to sauce ratio. This is, of course, in reference to One Pie Pizza, who does have a fantastic cheese to sauce ratio, in addition to homemade blue cheese, and they do catering and a whole bunch of other amazing things. Again, the online menu can be found in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you are listening to the show on. Joe, you're fantastic. Thank you for doing the Lord's work here. Yeah, free agency did come quick, as RJ said, and before we know it, free agency will be here. The draft will be here, and then before we know it, rookie minicamp will be here, the preseason, and then we'll be back in the regular season for the 2025 season. But Charles says, I'd like to order 1 Myles Garrett, please. I like that. That would be nice. I recognize Garrett. If I could pick someone to trade for, it would be Max Crosby, just out of personal preference, because I love his play style and what he is and how he goes about his business. So if I had to pick one, it would be Crosby, but obviously I would not complain if it was Myles Garrett. And you could make the case that Garrett is probably the better player, but I don't care. Crosby's awesome. So it fits what my brain wants, but it also fits what my heart wants. As Charles kind of just put into the comments there, for those of you playing at home live with us in this episode, or if you're watching later, listening later, whatever have you, put a comment in who you want the Bills to target, why you want them to target them, or if you think a certain position group needs to be the focus, or if you have a specific question. Again, for those of you riding live with us here, any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, put them up into the live chat. I will get to anything and everything as much as humanly possible throughout this episode. Super chats, of course, get a priority because 1, I respect the monetary donation. 2, the color attracts me like a cat with a laser pointer and it pulls me away from my notes. So what I'm going to be doing here, I've got 8 free agents that I've ranked. I've also got a couple honorable mentions and some little detail pieces with that. Some of these will tie into the film rooms that Eric and I have done in the film room the past couple of weeks in terms of our offensive and defensive priorities. We're not doing an individual wish list or rankings episode tomorrow. We're focusing on some players in relation to the Bills and how their combine will affect their draft status, tying it into skill set, what we're seeing on tape, all of those things. So I wanted to kind of put a nice bow on things from a free agency perspective for myself. Thought it'll be a nice, fun episode. And again, questions, thoughts, comments, concerns. If you like my rankings, if you hate them, if you got questions on why I omitted someone else or why I picked this guy or why I prioritized this position, kind of going through there, put it up into the chat and I will go through things accordingly. RJ says, what's the price difference between Garrett and Crosby? It probably doesn't make up the difference of talent between them. Crosby is great. Garrett may break Bruce's sack record. That's legendary. I would imagine, oh man, I haven't looked at but I would imagine Garrett will cost more just because of the age. But you know what's funny is I actually don't think I was looking this up a couple weeks ago. I don't think they're too far off. Myles Garrett is 29. And Max Crosby is 27? Interesting. So that's a really fun fact that I just learned. Huh. Yeah. Wow. I don't know why I thought Crosby was older. Yeah, Max is 27. I think the price difference, I don't think it's going to, I think Crosby being a couple years younger doesn't necessarily skew things too much. I think it's just the overall production that you do get. For me, the big thing with Crosby is just how little he leaves the field, which again, you could make the case, well, he's going to see a rotation for the Bills. How much does that matter? Yada, yada. But him just really going like 100 miles an hour, 100% of the time, not really leaving the field, playing the run and the pass like he does. And I think the big thing is, and I see your comment there, RJ, and I'm adding that in too. RJ says, I should say price difference being the trade value. Maybe Garrett is 2 first-round picks plus something else. Crosby may be a first and next year's third. I think it's 2 pieces. One is the price difference of the resources you have to allocate to get them from a trade perspective, but then also the financial commitment from a Garrett perspective who's looking for a contract extension. So there's kind of 2 price differences in relation to Garrett, the price that you have to pay to acquire him, and then the price that you have to pay to keep him in wherever he is long-term. So there's 2 price differences really there for Garrett. But I think what's interesting with Crosby is how much he's been double teamed and never really having a true running mate there in Vegas, putting him in Buffalo, ideally with Greg Rousseau on the other side. That opens things up for Rousseau, but maybe it opens things up for Crosby, even with Ed Oliver on the inside too. Does Crosby start to see more one-on-ones? I would just, and this isn't even a Buffalo thing, but I would like to see Crosby go somewhere where he has a running mate, where he's not the only guy on that line. They drafted Tyree Wilson a couple seasons ago to be that guy. He really wasn't that. They brought in Christian Wilkins. He was a nice boon to that line, but it's still really Crosby and friends. And it probably would be that in Buffalo as well, but I think he's got an opportunity to not have to just put everybody in his U-Haul or in his backpack every single week and have to play defense. So I do think it would be that's kind of like a big thing for me with Crosby. Like, I don't know if we've really seen his maximum, no pun intended, production because of how much of a focal point he is for opposing offenses, because he's really been the only guy on that defense. But RJ says, and hear me out, we trade all our picks for both Garrett and Crosby. If one of them could play defensive tackle regularly, I guess you could put Garrett at defensive tackle, and then you're just all gas, no breaks, penetration, attack offenses, one gap, get upfield, and kind of see what happens. But that would be very interesting. Trucker Viewer says, what do you think of prospect, defensive tackle, tight end, fullback, JJ? I always don't know how to pronounce his last name, Pegwis from Ole Miss. I haven't watched his tape yet. Good question, but I haven't gotten there yet. Him, I watched Walter Nolan from Ole Miss and a little bit of Princely from Ole Miss as well, and Trey Amos, but I have not watched JJ. I will. He's in my next group. I've kind of been rotating through different position groups, and then I get bored with certain position groups, so I'll jump to another position group. My process is very arbitrary in terms of how I go through guys and tier them and what I do from a scouting perspective before I rank everybody, but I will get to him. Pretty much every defensive lineman I need to look at because defensive line is a priority. That is a nice segue into kind of my focus and first piece for the free agency rankings. If we're looking at this team right now, and again, so I want to put this within the backdrop of, the conversation I think is always had around free agency of, put money into this or sign this guy or go after this position in free agency and then take this other guy in the draft or go after this position in the draft. And my big thing with all of that is that sounds nice and it is ideal, but you can never guarantee how the draft boards are going to fall, even from a positional standpoint. If you think like, okay, say you love the defensive tackles in this class and you're saying, you know what, they don't really have to address defensive tackle in free agency because they can get a great one at 30 and they can get another one with their first second round pick or their second round pick, whatever you want to do. Maybe the board doesn't fall that way. Maybe the guys that you thought were going to be perfect and they're at 30 suddenly aren't there. And now the best guys that are there are a corner or an edge, or maybe it's a wide receiver, or maybe it's a safety or something like that. So I say all that to say the free agency aspect of things, I'm using this as if they need to fill, like as of right now, like what they need to fill right now. What are the biggest holes? Where are they? Why do they exist? How can they be addressed? That's how I'm attacking free agency right now from that perspective. And from a Bills perspective, we know Brandon Beane likes to fill as many holes as possible in free agency. That way they can really go best player available in the draft. And what I think is really exciting, if you're a Bills fan, is the positions of need for this team: defensive tackle, edge, corner, safety, maybe to a degree, maybe wide receiver. One of those, if not multiple, if not really all of them, is going to have somebody sweet available at pick 30. And it just depends on, are they a scheme fit? is the value right? What have you done in free agency? How do you balance everything out? So on and so forth. But I think there will be a really nice player. I don't want to say this and jinx it, so my fingers are crossed here, but I don't want to jinx the hell out of that. But there will be really nice pieces available to help the Bills at 30. But from a free agency conversation perspective, for my priorities and rankings right now, if we're talking about the needs for this team, I addressed it from what do you have to do in free agency? And there will be some caveats to some pieces. I will sit here and say, like, oh, okay, let's have, my idea is to sign this guy and then draft someone in this range at this point, kind of pair things together. But that draft is never a guarantee. You never know exactly what you are going to get. So kind of want to address things as they need to be addressed right now on this team. And with that being said, I was going back and forth and debating if I should start with number 1 or if I should start with number 8, but I'm going to start with number 1. Save the best for first is what we're going to do right now. And this should be no surprise if you watch the film room, if you listen to me on the show, if you follow me on Twitter, this position shouldn't really be a surprise, and this player shouldn't really be a surprise. Also, I'm seeing several comments that are coming through. I will be pulling those up after, kind of do it after each person that I talk about here. So this first person, Mr. DJ Jones, defensive tackle from the Denver Broncos, formerly of the San Francisco 49ers. And this is twofold. One, I think defensive tackle is the biggest need on this team right now, not even from a player standpoint. If you don't like Ed Oliver, if you don't like Daquan Jones, if you don't like Dwayne Carter, if that's your thought process, I'm not even taking that into account. Right now, they really need 4 defensive tackles. They've got 2. And I'm saying that 2, not to be disrespectful to Dwayne Carter, but I'm not really counting Dwayne Carter. I know, pardon me. I know Joe DeRosa in the chat loves Dwayne Carter, so forgive me for this, Joe. But I never give a full concrete judgment on players until after year 3. But Carter was super disappointing as a rookie. And Joe just says pain in all caps. Carter was super disappointing as a rookie, both as a pass rusher and as a run defender, just constantly getting blown off the ball, not really having any impact. A pass rush productivity of around 4, I believe, which is just really, really, really bad. You saw some flashes against Houston, and it was like, oh, okay. And I know the injury may have potentially derailed him, and I'm not completely writing him off in any way, shape, or form, right? Although I do think he is somewhat closer to his ceiling already now than he is further away from it, which is another scary notion with him. But that being said, if you look at this defensive tackle room right now, who's on the team, who's being paid, who's in this group, it's Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Dwayne Carter, Zion Logue, and Branson Dean. If we're looking at it, you really have your top 3 in the rotation of Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, and Dwayne Carter. I still like Daquan Jones. I think he had a better year last year than he's being given credit for. I think there was a drop-off in effectiveness and production, especially compared to 2023. But again, 2023, before he went down, he was playing at legitimately, in my opinion, an all-pro level. What he was doing as a pass rusher, what he was doing as a run defender was A tier, S tier, higher, whatever is your top tier in 2023. I think he had a better year, especially on tape, than he got credit for. I think a lot of the positives that he had and the good reps that he made that were on tape, I think some of them flew under the radar a bit. So I do think he had a better year than he's being given credit for. But I think at this point, he's better suited as the defensive tackle 3. And if Daquan Jones is your defensive tackle 3, if you can get someone to be a running mate with Ed Oliver, then I think you're in a really good spot. That's what DJ Jones would be. And especially from a run defense standpoint, 11.3 run stop percentage last year. That was 4th in the league. What he is inside, a little bit from my scouting report, violence and juice inside. He's more athletic than he gets credit for. He plays with good leverage and lean. He's able to hold his ground and anchor versus the run. He can limit displacement versus double teams and also win against them. You'll see him drop that knee and kind of shimmy his way through and cause some disruption with penetration. He pairs good hand usage. And when I say good hand usage, I mean both in terms of the placement and the pop and the strength in them. He pairs good hand usage with play diagnosis and recognition to disrupt. 14 minutes in, first flub, man, to disrupt blocking schemes and shed blocks. You will see him engage and peek and see a double team come, and he'll drop that knee. You will see him go forward and see a down block coming and work opposite it. You will see him attack, read the running back's track, and then operate accordingly. Just how he plays against the run, really high level. And then he displays a high level of competitive toughness and play strength. If you are the Bills, and this isn't even necessarily unique to the Bills, but obviously we're focused on the Bills here. If you are the Bills and you want to play numbers and coverage and you want a light box and you want to play nickel and you want to have your linebackers be Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard, who are both on the smaller side of things, especially Terrell Bernard, you need guys up front who can win up front. You need guys who cannot get displaced. This is my biggest thing. And for those who don't know, displacement is just getting moved off the ball. It can happen in two ways. You can get displaced vertically, north and south, so literally like driven back, or you can get displaced horizontally, east and west, and knocked, sideways, knocked over a couple of gaps, and then all of a sudden the hole opens that way. That was happening too much on the interior of the Bills' defensive line in 2024. Happened to Dwayne Carter a ton. Happened to Austin Johnson a ton. Happened to Jordan Phillips a ton. Quentin Jefferson wasn't really on the field to kind of get run defense snaps, but it happened to him a little bit as well. Didn't happen to Daquan too much, but you weren't really seeing too much effectiveness aside from that. And then Ed Oliver's play style, from time to time, just because of his play style, upfield, one gap penetrating, you're going to see him kind of get knocked a little bit, but it doesn't happen as much as you think. And Ed is a solid run defender. He's a better player than he's gotten credit for a lot of times in Bills Mafia circles. Had a great game in the AFC Championship against the Chiefs. Really was strong up front against the run and the pass in Kansas City there. Give him a running mate. DJ Jones is that guy. Gives you a little bit of juice and pop as a pass rusher. He can compress the pocket. He can knock some dudes back, but just that strength as a run defender to occupy blockers, to win one-on-ones. You need guys up front that can win one-on-ones and also be a force multiplier and protect other guys and have a positive domino effect or chain reaction effect on the defense. DJ Jones is that guy. His average annual value per spot track right now is 11.2. I don't think he's going to get that. I'd be comfortable giving him anywhere kind of pushing double digits. I'll give him 9. I'll give him 10 if it's a 1 or 2 year deal. I think I think this role and this type of player is significantly important to the Bills defense. Now, if you could guarantee me that they could fill this role in the draft, I would take that. But again, there's no guarantee that the guys you want there are going to be there. 1. 2, there is the idea of kind of having that known quantity. DJ Jones represents that. So even if you have somebody who you love as a prospect, I don't care who it is, from whoever's number 1 on your big board all the way to whoever's last, it's still a projection. There are no known quantities in the draft. Prospects are still prospects. They are very much the mystery boat in Family Guy. So I want the known quantity. I want somewhat of an assurance in terms of what the Bills are going to get, and then using that as the starting point. I think DJ Jones is the closest thing to a kind of a splash that the Bills would make in free agency. I think they can, this isn't even, I think they can afford somebody around a double-digit average annual value. Could be a corner, could be a defensive lineman, it could be an edge, it could be a defensive tackle, however you kind of want to slice that up. But Jones, for me, would be the splash or the splurge financially because of the force multiplication. And he's just good as an individual player. Having a guy on the inside who can just win these one-on-ones and handle double teams and not get knocked off the ball is going to be a tremendous additive to that defensive line and then force multiplier to the rest of the defense. It gives them the opportunity to succeed with light boxes and keep numbers in coverage and have that benefit. And if you can defend the run from too high coverages and defend the run with light boxes and keep numbers in coverage as much as possible. And when I say numbers in coverage, I mean, if you're, doing things with lighter boxes, you got more guys on the back end. It gives you the opportunity to have more bodies in coverage than the offense can put out into the route distribution. If you have the numbers advantage, sometimes it's just basic math. If you've got 7 guys in coverage versus 5 guys out in the route distribution, that's an advantage every time. And sometimes there's not 5 in the route distribution. Sometimes there's 4. Sometimes there's 3. So you kind of go from there. RJ said, RJ, I don't know if you typo here. You said Ed didn't have an amazing AFC Championship game. He was also being choked out and held on almost every single play. It's insane he did what he was able to do in that game. I don't know if your didn't was a typo and was supposed to be did. I thought he had a very good game. Penetration against the pass, penetration against the run, taking on blockers, shedding guys. Again, he wasn't going up against Tooney this time. I forget who was even there at left guard for them because they had Tooney at left tackle, but I thought he had a really strong game and flashed a ton within that. Charles saying DJ is going to be pricey. Yeah, that's kind of like, again, the top tier would be of that level. I don't think they're going to spend money on someone who's going to be like 15, 16 average annual value. I think it would be, okay, RJ said, sorry, Ed did have an amazing game. Thank you, RJ. I was like, I know you're usually not even usually, you are very pessimistic, but I was like, really? Even here, I was like, he had a really good game. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify. That's the only reason I did. I figured it was a typo, but knowing you as a person, I wanted to make sure. But yeah, and to go back to Charles's comment, yeah, I think DJ would kind of be that's what a splash is going to be. Maybe they go crazy and they sign Sweat or they do something a little bit out of the box, but I want to keep this realistic. I don't want to do too much and say if they do these 10 moves, they can open up like $50 million worth of cap space and they could sign this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. I do want to keep it somewhat realistic. And I think DJ Jones is that type of splash that could be had on the market there. That's my first one. Number 2 is also on the defensive line. Number 2 for me is Dante Fowler Jr., edge defender of the Washington Commanders from last season and then from several other teams before that, the Cowboys, the Falcons at some point. Again, another conversation piece on the defensive line. If we are looking at edge right now, the edges on the roster right now, Von Miller, Greg Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, Javon Solomon. I do like Javon Solomon. I think he had encouraging moments as a rookie. I would like to see what he can do in year 2. I don't want to bank on seeing what he can do in year 2. Hope is not a plan. I don't want to operate in that way. Von Miller, I think he had a fine year last year. He really kind of played to what my expectations were. I thought he would be like a high-end 3, low to mid-tier edge 2 at times, and I think he was that for the majority of the year. I think a lot of his wins and successes came against the run, which wasn't talked about enough, and I think some of his advanced metrics from a pass rush perspective were blown up a little bit from a positivity standpoint, especially the playoff ones. But again, I think he had a fine year. I talked about this on the salary cap extravaganza show. I don't like what he's being paid. He doesn't have a lot of leverage on the market. I think Brandon Beane and company should approach him for a pay cut. If he's not willing to take that pay cut, I know it sucks and there's a lot of dead cap inherited with it, but I am voting for the Von Miller cut aspect. But whether Von stays, whether Von goes, whatever have you, I think this edge grouping needs more athleticism. They need more juice. They need more dudes who can just hunt. And I liked the Leonard Floyd signing a couple years ago. I like the idea of bringing in a known mercenary off the edge. I would take that anywhere really on the defensive line. And Fowler is that, especially as a pass rusher. Even if you want to keep Von Miller, that's fine. I'll take another dude with juice and bend and athleticism. Von isn't that same level that he was when he signed here, but he's still more in that mold than Rousseau or Epinesa are. Some pieces for Dante Fowler. Last year, he was 16th out of 122 qualifying edges in pass rush productivity. He was tied for 12th in the league in sacks with 10.5. He was tied for 38th out of those 122 edges in total pressures. He brings juice and athleticism. He is a slasher getting to the quarterback. He wins with that juice and athleticism, that slashing style, and also his hands. He's not a pocket compressor, which again is an outlier. The Bills love pocket compression at the edge spot, but I do think that's needed. And maybe they are moving a little bit in that direction, given Javon Solomon, given Von Miller. We'll see. He can get a bit over aggressive at times, particularly versus the run, which will leave himself a bit out of position, but he does play the run with effort. And again, I'm trying to use him more in known passing situations, known downs, as just an assassin off the edge when they need him. He's really good with those bootleg, counter, and reverse responsibilities. You'll see him come off the edge and see what's going on. Is the ball coming back his way? Is somebody cutting back? Is the quarterback booting out? And then he's got the athleticism to chase them down and do something about it. He displays a good surf technique. I broke down several plays on Twitter, but you can watch Washington play Baltimore last year, and Baltimore's running the read option, and he's using that surf technique, and he sees Lamar keeps it, and Lamar takes off to the sideline, and Fowler takes a good angle, and with his athleticism is able to make him really go horizontal. He chases Lamar down, and he brings him down. And that athleticism to close down on mobile QBs in space is a really nice piece. He can also rush from either side. So if you want to put him with Groot or Epinesa or Von or whoever the hell, whatever side is their best side, he can operate from either side. He's effective on stunts and slants and games. He's crafty as a spiker and as a looper. He knows how to game up tackles and guards. He knows how to clear space for his running mates and also kind of work off of that and use that space against offensive linemen. He's got good situational awareness and play recognition. You'll see him calling out adjustments based on offensive formation and alignment. Really good snap timing and anticipation, especially off motion. You'll see him kind of key and figure out what's going on. And all of a sudden, after doing that a couple times or in the first half, in the second half of games or in high leverage situations, he's using that snap timing and anticipation, and he's shooting gaps, or he's just jumping through right as the ball is snapped, and he's breaking through, and he's making a tackle on a fullback dive right as the quarterback is handing the ball off. Good rush transitions, first touch to rip or spin or swipe. He's able to flatten with core strength. He is kind of that guy for me of, again, an assassin or a mercenary at that edge spot. And I also, again, I'm going to continue to clamor for this every single year. They need more juice and athleticism off the edge. Pocket compression is nice, but you need some dudes with some kind of bend, some kind of athleticism, some kind of change of direction. I think the edge grouping is very much like the wide receiver room in terms of you need a basketball lineup there, and the Bills' edge grouping is pretty much just power forwards at this point and some small forwards. You need some point guards or two guards. You need some slashers. You need something like that. His average annual value per spot track is only $5.2 million. I would gladly pay that. But my thought is that he might not get that much. Again, that's more of like a hope than anything potentially, but he is coming off of where are my contract detail notes? He's coming off a 1-year, $3.25 million deal with the Commanders. So, and he had a good year last year. So I could see that spiking up to 5. Maybe he signs, he's 30 years old. He'll be 31 this August. So maybe he signs a 2-year, $10 million deal, or that pushes up to 11 or 12. Either way, I don't think that is too expensive given the juice that he provides and the need that he fills on this team. Again, you need somebody who can give you some kind of edge one ability as a pass rusher. I don't know if Fowler is necessarily that. Again, the sacks and the pressures and the productivity will kind of give that to you. I think, he's more of a high-end 2 as a pass rusher, or maybe a low-tier 1 on his best day, but that's fine. Pairing him with Greg Rousseau, who I think is an edge 2 as a pass rusher and obviously a 1 as a run defender, and that just buoys the room. So whether it's Fowler and Vaughn and Groot and Epinesa and Solomon, or Vaughn goes and Fowler takes Vaughn's spot, we kind of go from there. I think I would like that very much, very much. David says, sign Chase Young. He's only 25 years old. I just think Chase Young is going to get paid big time on the open market. I know he didn't develop into the player people thought he was going to be coming out of Ohio State, but even his time with Washington and then San Francisco and then the Saints this past year, there are some real positives that you see on tape, but I think he's going to get paid more because of that piece, the age, the traits that are still there. I think you're going to see some team give him, like 12 to 15 million. I don't think he gets more. Maybe some team really kind of overshoots and gives that to him, but I don't think the Bills have that financial flexibility. And if they do, I don't want them to do it for Chase Young. But I mean, if his market value isn't what it is, I would take, again, athleticism and youth and juice, and some moves and plan, I'll take that. But I think the known quantity of Fowler, the age, the veteran experience, what he brings to the room, and the cost. All of this is relative to cost. That's really kind of why I'm sticking there on Fowler. Noah says, how about a flyer on DeMarcus Lawrence? I like Lawrence. I just don't know how great the fit is and what he is now at this point. Especially coming from Dallas's defense and how he operated there, having some injury concerns the past couple of years. Again, if it's a flyer and it's a cheap flyer, I don't mind. I just want more known quantities on this defensive line. So I don't hate that idea. I just think Fowler tracks better and fits better and is more of a cleaner fit and need, and given everything that he is. And I think Fowler, again, edge is another conversation similar to defensive tackle of there's some really good edges in this draft class. What if one falls to 30? What if one falls in the second round? Both of their second round picks, they don't have a third and then they have a fourth. I would love that too. There's several really good edges I like in this draft class. I just don't know who's going to be there and when, especially with how some of these guys have tested at the combine. We'll see how their pro days come out, but there's some really good tape on some dudes. This draft class is very deep on the defensive line, both especially in the interior at defensive tackle, but I do think at edge as well. But stylistic fit is so important and schematic fit is so important as well. So I would like to address that now. Get yourself a known quantity. And if somebody falls at 30, fantastic. If somebody falls in the second round, that's fantastic. I will take there is never a downside to having too many good players on your defensive line, similar to the offensive line. I will never have a problem drafting offensive line or drafting defensive line, unless it's Boogie Basham. Sorry for taking advantage of that low-hanging fruit there. But yeah, Fowler is very much another drop in that bucket of, turning that edge grouping into a basketball lineup. I'm very interested to see if they continue to move in that direction with some of the moves they made the past couple of years, or is it more just sprinklings of athleticism within the pocket compression and size and length type of conversation and aspects. So I'm very interested to see kind of how that schematic archetype continues to trend, but Fowler is somebody who ticks a lot of boxes for me. Ooh, Roy says Epinesa is better than Chase Young. As a pass rusher, I don't think so. But that's fair. I mean, Chase Young has not lived up to expectation, which is unfortunate. Coach Chapman says the Bills see the advantage of the athletic edge bender to go with their pocket compressors. They have shown the adjustment with getting Bond, then Floyd, then Solomon. They want a mix, I believe. Yeah, I could see that. I don't know if they necessarily want more of a mix, or do they... Again, is it just those smatterings, or are they trying to bring more balance to it? I am interested to see kind of what they do within that this offseason. David says maybe Hoecht from the Rams. It's funny. Maybe Michael Hoecht will be on this list. Who knows? He is actually coming up in a little bit. So yeah, again, give me an assassin off the edge with some juice, some athleticism, some bend, a known quantity. Fowler is that. He is a proven pass rusher with productivity. He adds what I would like to see added to this edge grouping, and he's got the track record and pedigree to kind of go with it, which I think would be a really nice boost and add to this grouping. Number 3, this is someone that I don't think is going to get talked about a lot. He's a favorite of mine in this free agent class because of cost and because of role that he will occupy. It is Roy Lopez, defensive tackle from the Arizona Cardinals. Played some straight up nose tackle right over the center when the Cardinals would be in their odd front type of looks, but he does have some one-tack experience. He's just a straight-up plugger, uses his hands and leverage to keep himself clean and discard blockers. Again, displacement. He doesn't get displaced horizontally or vertically, even against double teams. You can see him drop the knee. He'll reduce his surface area. He's able to hold his ground. Again, similarly to DJ Jones, hold his ground with lean and leverage. Also like DJ Jones, the ability to recognize blocking schemes, pullers, doubles, down blocks, etc. You are seeing him come off the line, off the snap, read what's happening in front of him or read what's happening around him peripherally and act accordingly. And despite the fact that he's a bigger dude and a plugger, around 320 pounds, he has enough burst and juice on the snap to be effective enough upfield. He's got enough lateral explosion to go from A gap to A gap. He's able to make plays laterally versus make plays laterally versus zone runs. You'll watch him kind of shoot the back door and chase something down to the sideline. You'll watch him run dudes down on tuttle screens. Overall, though, he does have minimal pass rush pop. This isn't a big moves guy. If he's winning, it's either with a push-pull or you'll watch him get off the line with some good explosion. He'll shake a little bit and then he'll rip and he'll get into the backfield. Again, it's not just pure huge mountain of a man, stick him in the middle and just have him occupy bodies and he won't give you anything. He is skewed more towards the run. I would say it's like 70-30 or 75-25, but I think that's fine. He is more of the rotational guy in an ideal world. So this would probably mean if you're signing Roy Lopez, Daquan's probably your starter, or maybe Roy Lopez is getting worked into some starter reps at some point. I think Daquan gives you more of some pass rush pop, so maybe Daquan is the 3 guy or the 3rd man in the rotation, however you want to kind of work through that. I know the Bills, and this is even within my philosophy a little bit as well, the Bills like their interior defenders to be able to play the run, but also get to the quarterback. They want guys who, again, I use this phrasing all the time. We say it on the film room, we say it on social and all that stuff. One gap penetrating guys who can get upfield. They want not necessarily Ed Oliver, but guys like that. They want guys who can get upfield and get into their gaps, attack. You're responsible for this gap on the snap, get off, go, hunt, get it. They don't lean towards kind of pluggers and I would have taken Elianku last year because of their struggles to kind of hold up against the run on the interior. But Elianku doesn't really give you any pass rush pop, so that's why they kept him on the practice squad. My argument with that, though, is despite him not giving you pass rush pop, I didn't think anyone else's combinations of pass rush, pop, and run defense was doing anything. Like Austin Johnson wasn't helping you as a pass rusher or as a run defender. Dwayne Carter wasn't helping you as a pass rusher or a run defender. So even though Ilianku is skewed like 99-1 in terms of run defense, I would have taken that because at least it's somebody who's effective at something. Roy Lopez is in that mold, but a little bit more athletic, does have the ability to get to affect the quarterback and compress the pocket again. He can get upfield, can penetrate a little bit, but this is somebody who's trying to go through dudes, and he's going to defend the run. He is going to occupy blockers up front. He will keep your second level defenders clean by disrupting flow and gum up the works. He can one gap. He can play gap and a half. He can play two gap. So I really do think there's a lot of potential for him. His average annual value is $3.5 million, which I would, or the projected average annual value is $3.5 million, which I would gladly sign him for right now. I do think he can be a valuable piece. He's coming off of a contract with the Cardinals for 2 years, $2 million. So that's an average annual salary of like $1 million. I think he could be had for even less than 3.5. I think he's a good rotational body, a good rotational piece, somebody to plug the middle, plug the interior, who can also get a little bit sideline to sideline, also get a little bit upfield, and he's nasty. This is somebody who just, there needs to be more, sandpaper, more grit, more tenacity, more violence and anger on the interior of the defensive line here. And I think Roy Lopez is a big move in that direction. Charles asks if there's any wide receivers on the list. Yes, there is. We'll get to that as we start to go forward. Yeah. So Roy Lopez is a big favorite of mine just because I like his play style. I like his tape and I like the cost. And again, the only downside is he is more rotational. DJ Jones, I think if you sign him, he's a starter. You plug him in right away. Daquan Jones becomes the third man in the rotation behind Ed and DJ Jones. I think if you sign Lopez, it's still more Daquan and Ed and then Roy Lopez. But I could see a world where Roy Lopez is the starter just because of how good he's going to be against the run and how much of a force multiplier he is. And so if we also go within that conversation, these first three options, defensive line, defense, this is where I think the majority of the work needs to be done. This offense was very good last year. I think there's some little tweaks that can happen offensively that can be addressed in free agency in the draft, but a good chunk of this list is defense. And then starting off, again, 3 defensive linemen, because I think the defensive line needs to be retooled. And even if you're not even just talking about retooling of the defensive line, they just need bodies at this point. Like they just don't have a rotation or a stable of dudes ready to go and get on the defensive line. So that defensive line needs focus and needs work. This next pick is going to be a shout out to David, who earlier said maybe Hoecht from the Rams. And my number 4 is Michael Hoecht, edge from the Los Angeles Rams. Eric and I talked about him a couple weeks in the film room. He's coming off a 1-year, $2.985 million deal. I think he could be had for something similar with the Bills. My big thing with him is his versatility and his skill set and his play style and his tenacity. I think he gives you a bit more of a flexible chess piece on your defensive line. He caught my eye a bunch this year just watching Rams tape. I always watch a lot of Rams offensive tape every year just because I like to study Sean McVay and see what he's doing. But defensively, they have some players who I really, really, really like. I loved Kobe Turner coming out a couple of years ago from Wake Forest, so I watched the Rams from time to time to see what he's doing. The Rams drafted Cam Kitchens, safety from Miami last year, so I wanted to watch them, see how he was doing. And then Jared Verse was just crushing numbers and stats every weekend, dude. So I was watching Rams tape throughout the year. And probably watched about 6 or 7 games of Rams tape throughout the year. And even before getting into free agency and doing studying and individual kind of evaluation. So I already had a good bank of Rams defense stuff in my brain and in my notes. And even when you're watching for something else, Hoecht is just always flashing. And the first thing, and not always flashing, but flashing a bunch in each game. And the thing that really caught me was how he was flashing. Sometimes he's coming off the edge and it's a pass rush rep. Sometimes he's coming off the edge and it's a run defense rep. Sometimes he's lined up in the A gap. Sometimes he's dropping into coverage in the hook curls or the flats. Like he's just used all over the place. And part of that is the Rams defense and what they're able to do. And the Bills don't necessarily operate with the same schematic structure, but I like what Hoecht can do. And if, we're trying to lean into some more simulated pressures and some creeper pressures, you want defensive linemen, especially edges, who can rush the quarterback and who also can maybe drop into coverage from time to time. Drop in is like a robber underneath or a low hole player, I should say, or drop to the hook to curls, play some zone and not be completely lost out there in space, but then also have the ability to rush the quarterback, play the run, do traditional defensive lineman stuff. Ooh, good comment there from David saying a big Byron Young fan from the Rams. Yeah, they hit on so many dudes up front on that defensive line. Really good for them. I just like what Hoecht brings: the tenacity, the chess piece, ability, the athleticism. I think he's a smart dude. I think he can function in a variety of roles, in a variety of situations and leverage spots, depending on what you want to do. He's got good hand usage, and he uses that to his benefit. Just good motor on top of it as well. I think he's a guy who ticks a lot of boxes from a cost-effective standpoint, but then also somebody who can wear a lot of hats. You can line him up inside and known passing downs and distances. Again, simulated pressures, creepers, what you can do with him, where you can move him around, how you can deploy him, and then what he brings from a mentality standpoint, a play style, size, athleticism, frame, all of this in one. He, I think, kind of ticks those boxes of trying to add more to the basketball lineup at defensive line, but also just increasing your overall versatility, or, adding to the basketball lineup at the edge grouping, I should say, but also just adding more to your overall versatility and then helping the defense out schematically as well. I do want to see this team move towards more simulated pressures, more creepers, disguising more of their fronts like they do coverage on the back end. I'd like to see some more creativity on the back end in general, but they do some of that on the back end. I'd like that more up front. I would like more pressure packages and different looks on third downs and known passing situations to confuse offenses. And Hoecht is a move in that direction because he could rush from the outside. He could rush from the inside. He could drop into coverage. He could drop into coverage in the hook to curl. He could drop from the curl to flat. He could just be a low hole player. You could have him spy your QB. That, depending on how athletic or mobile the QB is, that's the type of athleticism that he brings. So he's a big move in that direction for me. And again, I don't think the cost is going to be too much. These next two players, a little more on the expensive side from an anticipated market value, but I don't think they're going to get it on the open market, and I will tell you why. So number 5, cornerback, Asante Samuel Jr. from the Los Angeles Chargers. So I want to address one thing first. If the Bills go corner in free agency, I likely think it will be somebody that is more cost effective and more in line to kind of battle with a rookie corner for a starting spot. For example, when we talked in the film room a couple weeks ago, I think like a corner that makes a lot of sense schematically, but also from a price standpoint and like realism standpoint, like Benjamin St-Juste. I think you sign St-Juste, and then maybe if a really good corner falls to 30, you draft them, or you take a corner in round 2, they battle it out. If they don't, you still got St-Juste as your 3 or your 4, depending on what you think of Kaiir Elam. Either way, help buoy the room a little bit. I think the most realistic corner option, because again, the Bills need a corner too. And this is being talked about a little more as we've gone forward in this offseason. They need a corner too. I'm still not completely out on Kaiir Elam, although I do not have high hopes. I didn't really like his fit coming out of Florida. I didn't even really like him as a prospect. I just thought he was too grabby, despite the athleticism and the traits. But, hey, I thought if anybody could kind of coach him out of it, it would be the Bills. It appears they could not. So I'm not necessarily out on Elam, but I don't have any confidence in him at this point. So maybe he can turn it around with new coaches in the building again, like we had this conversation last year, but I definitely am not ready to have him as the CB2 conversation. I'm kind of okay with him being CB3. I'd rather him be CB4, but I say all that to say, I think them addressing the corner room this offseason likely comes in the form of signing a very cost-effective corner who can give you some corner 2 reps opposite of Christian Benford, and then you draft someone on day 1 or day 2. You have that competition and go from there. The reason I bring up Asante Samuel Jr. is because of what he offers and what his anticipated cost would be. So his market value on SpotTrack is $11.5 million average annual value. I don't think he is going to get that. I see him, some of these contracts are super inflated. And again, I know corners sometimes get overpaid, but with his size and his frame, and one issue in particular that I'm going to talk about here, but why it could be course corrected. So again, I'm kind of talking on both sides of my mouth a little bit. I don't think he's going to get $11.5 million average annual value. I could see him pushing like 9. I really do think 8 is more in line there. I could see him getting 3 years, 24 million, 2 years, 16 million, something like that. The reason I want him is what he offers the Bills from a coverage standpoint and his skill set being added to that secondary. First of all, he's sticky in man coverage. He understands leverage and help. He doesn't play a ton of press, but he's comfortable in press, both, press right at the line, and comfortable in off-man coverage as well. So press man and off-man. When he's pressing, it's usually that soft shoe press, so he's mirroring. He's not necessarily getting on the line and jamming guys and rerouting. He's using more body presence and footwork to press. He keeps his eyes on the QB and zone. He's able to maintain spatial responsibility while reading the QB. I put out some clips a couple weeks ago. The playoff game against Jacksonville is a great example. He's got 3 interceptions in that game. The second interception, it's cover 2. So he's got the flat. He's a cloud corner on the far side of the field. He reroutes his man, jams him, reroutes him, sinks a little bit, sees a drag coming from the other side of the field from the number 1. He sees it. He plants. He already starts getting upfield, and he jumps it kind of on the hash because he reads the play, sees where Trevor Lawrence is going, sees the route distribution develop, and makes an interception. His ability, again, to maintain his responsibility, but also fall off in coverage, collect from the route distributions, read the quarterback's eyes, read the route distribution, and then have a little bit of, playing with some anticipation and playing with a little bit of risk reward. You see that benefit the Chargers, or you've seen that benefit the Chargers time and time again. And I pull up my phone because I didn't write down this stat, but I have it saved in my drafts on my phone. So Asante Samuel Jr. came into the league in 2021. From that time, from 2021 through 2024, he's tied for 23rd in terms of forced incompletions. He's tied for the 23rd most forced incompletions with 37. Also, he was hurt last year, so he only played 4 games in 2024. So this isn't even a full set of games last year, and he's still tied for the 23rd most forced incompletions. And then that's a 13.9% forced incompletion rate when you ratio it versus his coverage targets. He will jump routes. He will make plays on the ball. He's got good hands. He's got good ball skills. He's a willing tackler. This is his biggest issue. He's a willing tackler, but he needs to be more responsible. Missed tackles is definitely an issue for him. Part of it is due to his size. He's a smaller guy, shorter arms, not the biggest frame, but it is more technique than anything. He is a willing tackler. Watch him tackle Carson Steele last year against the Chiefs. The guy who is just running over everyone, who is a hammer as a running back. Samuel comes up, gets him down on the ground, one-on-one, and gets him on the upper body, doesn't even go low, gets him up top, eats a stiff arm, hangs on, drags him down. He is a willing tackler. He'll finish guys, in coverage from a receiver standpoint. He'll pass someone off, jump the flat route, pin a running back down on the ground right away, but he will miss tackles. Again, part of it is due to his size, but I do think it's more technique than anything. And because he is a willing tackler, that's something that I think the Bills can coach up. They like you to have more of a good, sound tackling foundation when you come in, but I do think what he offers from a coverage standpoint balances that a little bit. And because he is willing, I think you can coach him up in that regard. He's a good coverage and adjustment communicator pre-snap. He looks to jump routes like I talked about, which is, a risk-reward aspect, but he anticipates breaks and he diagnoses really well. He's got a quick trigger, good short area burst and quickness. He collects and passes off well from route distributions. Again, say, he's carrying his man upfield. He sees another guy come into his zone. He lets that first man go to the safety. He comes up. He's very good horizontally and vertically, variety of coverages, passing guys off, recognizing where he needs to go, how to space routes out. And then on top of it, again, reading the quarterbacks, diagnosing, anticipating breaks, reading route distributions, collecting and passing off. Especially as a cloud corner, I really like him as a cover 2 corner. But again, he does have man coverage ability. You can put him in press a little bit. I think he is a move, despite the fact that he's a smaller guy, I think he is a move towards restricting airspace for offenses and wide receivers. With his man coverage, really good feet. Again, he's not bullying guys because he's a smaller dude, but he's got good feet. He's got good fluid hips, and he understands leverage. He understands coverage. He understands how to read receivers, and he's tenacious and tough as hell. He wants to battle with guys. He wants to restrict that airspace in a variety of ways. Again, good ball skills. He's able to stay in phase versus various body types. The size and frame will get the best of him at times at the catch point, even if he is in good positions. But again, like I talked about, the forced incompletions, this is the dude, interceptions, PBUs. He's just in and around the ball all the time. And usually it's because he's in phase in man coverage or because he knows how to flow to the ball and read the play and diagnose it properly if he's in zone. Last year, he was put on injured reserve after 4 weeks with what was called a shoulder injury. He said that he suffered a recurrence of stinger symptoms that have been bothering him at other points in his life. I don't know how much that's going to impact the contract situation. I think because of the injury last year being a bit on the smaller side. I don't think he's going to get that double-digit average annual value. He is another move that I could see kind of being a splash, somewhere around 8 million, 9 million average annual value. I would be a fan of this. If you gave me the choice of giving him this money or DJ Jones that money, I'm 1000% giving it to DJ Jones. But I think Samuel, again, his coverage ability meshes really well with what the direction I want the Bills to go in from a coverage standpoint. And then some of his deficiencies, especially the tackling, I do think can be coached up because he is a willing tackler. I would like him on this team. Let me go through real quick with some notes. Zach of All Trades says, side note, what system does Elam look the best in? Jacksonville, maybe. I think it's got to be a system that plays a lot of press man, and it's just man coverage in general. The issue with it is, and this is what I said as soon as he was drafted, because the thing was, oh, he's a man coverage corner, and he's got this athleticism, and he's got these traits. He was grabby as hell at Florida. I remember, I forget who it was. Somebody really liked Elam during the draft process because I was down on him. The corners I wanted, when if you know me, you know this, I wanted Trent McDuffie and I wanted Roger McCreary. McDuffie has become an all-pro. McCreary has become a really good nickel corner for Tennessee, but I thought he could still live on the outside, especially in man coverage, even though he had shorter arms, but I digress. My biggest thing with Elam, I remember a couple of people referencing like, oh, watch him against Bama. You know, he's locking up Jamison Williams. And he wasn't really locking up Jamison Williams. He was just grabbing the hell out of him. There's no illegal contact in college football. There's pass interference, but there's no illegal contact. So you can just beat the hell out of a receiver kind of as much as you want before the ball is in the air. And he took advantage of that. And that doesn't work in the NFL. We know that story as soon as RJ says McCreary and his T-Rex arms. Yeah, him and his T-Rex arms. He's become a legit nickel for Tennessee. Again, part of it is because of the size and the frame. He gets some work outside from time to time. I still think he can live as a man corner there, but again, I digress. Yeah, shout out to Roger McCreary and his T-Rex arms there. But going back to you, Zach, yeah, I just thought even when he was in man coverage, he was overly grabby. And we know that story in his rookie training camp where they had to put boxing gloves on him because he was grabbing so much. And I think they had to do it again in year 2. He's just too grabby. He doesn't bring his feet. I don't know where and what the disconnect is. I think he is best suited for a man coverage system, particularly press, but he's so grabby. And again, this goes back to my initial evaluation. He's so grabby that he's going to draw a ton of flags. And they're like egregious type of flags. And his feet aren't great and they haven't improved too much. And you see him kind of panic at the top of routes from now and again and time to time. It would be more of a man coverage and press man system, but even then, I think he's so grabby that it kind of almost cancels it out. I just don't see him working. I didn't like. I forget where I had him in my draft. I think I had like a 3rd round grade on him because of the traits, maybe a late 2. I don't remember. But I wasn't the biggest fan coming out. I hope he could turn around. He's a smart dude. Eric and I had him in the film room. He understands coverage. He understands shoulder angle for QBs and how to read and how to process. So and he's got the physical tools and traits. So I don't know. I truly don't know where the disconnect is. Like I find it confusing because he is a smart dude and he has the tools physically. I just don't know why he can't connect the two. But yeah. David says Samuel, Ward, or Carlton Davis. I would take Asante Samuel over Shavarius Ward or Carlton Davis. Ward, I don't think has the athleticism or the juice that I want at the corner spot. Davis has a little more, but there's injury stuff with him. And I think the cost would be more. Asante Samuel Jr. would be my guy because of his age, because of his play style. That would be pretty sweet. Comment here saying it would be cool for McDermott to coach both Samuel and his son. That's right. I think he did. He did coach Asante Samuel, the dad, when he was a Philly. Good call. Good call. Good call. And Charles said his daddy was a baller. Yeah, Asante Samuel Jr. or Asante Samuel Sr. couldn't tackle either, but he wasn't really willing. He was a bad tackler and also didn't try, but dude would jump routes and pick 6 stuff all day. Yeah, that's a good call. RJ says, I just don't get why Elam is bad. He really puts in the work. He has the physical tools. He's super smart, a great attitude. I just don't get it. I agree. I don't get it. And I'm not just saying it because we had him on the show or because he's the Bill. Like we were talking to him offline before the show started. Dude was super smart. And then we did the show. And you can see in that show, for anybody who wants to watch it, just type in like Cover One Film Room, Kaiir Elam. And you can see, again, he's breaking down route concepts. And he's, hey, these routes were over here, but I knew the quarterback was going to go to the deeper one because I could tell by the plane and angle of his shoulders that he was going to look deeper. So that's why I peeled off. He's talking about the The interception in the playoffs against the Dolphins. It's cover 2, so he's that cloud corner. And he sinks underneath, I believe it's a smash concept. He sinks underneath the corner route and he gets an interception. And he does that because he's reading the QB, but he can see the quarterback change his angle and his plane on his shoulders. And he can tell he's going to go for the deeper route. So Elam just keeps sinking and he sinks underneath it and he picks it off. He's smart and he's got the physical tools and traits. He's big, he's long, he's strong, he's fast, he's smart. He's been around ball his whole life with his family. I don't get it. I truly don't. I don't know where the disconnect is. Yeah, I don't. It's perplexing. Noah says Benford needs to teach Elam if there's any hope left, which I doubt. Man, I don't know at this point. Charles says, do you think the addition of the coach from Jacksonville means more man coverage next year? Yes. And I think more press as well. I broke it down in the film a couple weeks ago. I think so. Ryan Nielsen was the defensive coordinator of the Falcons in 2023, and then he was the defensive coordinator of the Jags in, and the defensive coordinator of the Jags in 2024. In 2023, the Falcons, I don't want to say the specific ranking because I don't remember off the top of my head. I think they had like the 2nd or 7th most press reps of anyone. And then in 2024, Jacksonville was either 2nd or 7th. And then in 2023, AJ Terrell was towards the top of the league in press reps. He was their number 1 corner. And then their second corner was like 17th or something. And then with the Jags, I think Monteric Brown had the most reps, second most reps in press. And their second corner was like top 10 as well. I expect more man coverage and I expect more press man. But Sean McDermott did say that Ryan Nielsen would be focused more on the defensive line. Like that's his forte. That's where he comes from. So I don't know. Maybe it won't affect anything. But I just, given all the connection pieces, bringing in the coach from New England, where New England plays a ton of cover 1, plays a ton of man coverage, like Nielsen coming in as a defensive assistant, what McDermott said at the end of the Kansas City game, I do expect more man and I do expect more press. How much? I don't know. Could be a 1% increase, could be a 5% increase, but I do expect more man. I do expect more press as well. So more man coverage, more press. And then I also expect more simulated pressures and creeper pressures. Again, I don't know how much from a percentage standpoint, but my favorite thing about Ryan Nielsen 2 seasons ago with Atlanta was his simulated pressure packages and his creeper pressures. I was watching, before this past season, the 2024 season started, I was watching tape on Jesse Bates, the safety for the Falcons, because I love Jesse Bates, and watched like 5 or 6 games for the Falcons. And one of the big things I came away with was the simulated and creepers that Atlanta was running. That was without having a ton of talent or dudes in their front 7. No disrespect, but they were just scheming teams up left and right on 3rd downs and in known passing downs and situations. So with Ryan Nielsen being added, I think more man, more press, and I do think more simulateds and creepers, especially with the simulateds and creepers, because even if he is focusing more on the defensive line, that ticks into that world. But we will see. We will see. Alex says, what is the compensation for DJ Jones? I think it's going to be anywhere from $8 to $9.5 million. He's put as 11.5 on Spot Track. I don't think he's going to get that much. I think it's going to be somewhere between 8 and 9.5, and I would gladly play it. Question from Mr. Spunky, Mr. Spunky Llama. Do we think it's a confidence issue with Kaiir Elam? Guy clearly knows ball, knows how to ball. I do think it's a confidence issue. I just think it's something mental. There's some disconnect. I think he doesn't bring his feet. He gets grabby. He lunges at the top of routes. And I don't know if it's a confidence issue. I don't know if it's a, panicky, kind of forget my technique, heat of the moment type of issue, but I wouldn't expect that considering, playing at Florida and playing in those high leverage games against high leverage, or high level talent. I wouldn't expect that. I think it's got to be a confidence, but again, I don't know. And I don't want to speculate too much. It's just tough. It's just tough. Nikki says Elam's a kid who, once he loses his confidence in a game, he just gives way too much cushion. Yeah, there was also some schematic stuff as well. Like, I don't know, man. Like I'm still just genuinely perplexed. Like, I don't get it. I thought it would take time for him to adjust. I thought he needed time on task to adjust to the Bill system because of how much man he played and because of how much, less grabby he needed to be than he was at Florida. But we've seen some really nice flashes. We just haven't seen it kind of come together overall. Let me take a drink real quick. But yeah, say all that to say, Asante Samuel Jr. is number 5 for me. I like the idea of making a splash at either corner or defensive tackle. Again, I would rather do it at defensive tackle. There are several corners that I really, really like who I think are going to be available at 30. And the only thing that holds me back from fully committing to Asante Samuel Jr. in free agency is just some of those tackling pieces. Again, he is willing, and I do think a lot of it is technique, but again, some of it is due to frame, and you can't coach size, you can't coach frame. You can coach the technique, and he does have the want to, he does have the desire, he is willing, but some of that just worries me a little bit. And then some of the size and frame stuff at the catch point. Again, all the things that were concerns coming out of Florida State, but I do think he's a good corner. I do think he would fit in the defense. I do think he can play more press than he gets credit for because he has the footwork to play soft shoe and be a problem. Then the ball skills on top of it, plus the mentality. I would gladly take him. Another corner next up on my list, number 6, is Paulson Adebo, corner from the New Orleans Saints. Another one who, if you look at market value projections, I think are a bit too high. Market value projection per spot track is $11.1 million. I don't think he's going to get that. The main reason I don't think he's going to get that is he broke his femur last year in week 7. I think that would drop his price tag to somewhat of an affordable corner 2 range, or a 1-year type of kind of prove it deal with a winning team to show teams like, hey, I'm fine, I'm good to go. It's a shame that he got hurt because with the Saints trading Lattimore, he had the opportunity to be like the CB1 for the Saints last year and could have earned himself a big payday on the open market. He still might. Like, he's got some fun tape. He's got some production, which I'm going to talk about here, but I don't think he's necessarily going to cash in on this deal. Maybe he gets, if he signs a multi-year deal, I do think it's similar to the Asante Samuel deal. I think it's more around 8 to 9.5, maybe 10 average annual value, but I don't think it's going to hit there. I think it'll be more between like 7.5 to 9, maybe 9.5 pushing it tops. And if that's a multi-year deal, cool. Maybe he signs a 1-year 10, a 1-year 9. Again, maybe he signs a 1-year, maybe a 1-year 6 or 7, a 1-year prove it. And then he's going to prove it. And then next year he cashes in on the 3-year $33 million deal or the 3-year $38 million deal, something like that. The reason I like him, again, I've talked about it this offseason. I've talked about it a bit on this show. I want corners who are comfortable in press. That's my big thing with looking for guys in the draft this year. So not to kind of get in too much, but part of the reason I really like Trey Amos from Ole Miss is because of his comfortability in press and what he's able to do. So guys who are comfortable restricting airspace. I want guys who are comfortable in press, who are comfortable in man. Either way, both of those things, especially together, but both of those things constrict airspace. That is what I'm trying to do. Squeeze passing windows, constrict airspace, reroute receivers, disrupt their timing, disrupt the timing with the quarterback, affect route distributions. That is what I would like. Just get mean and nasty and get into dudes' kitchens left and right. Adebo is very comfortable in press. He broke his femur in week 7 last year, so that means he only played weeks 1 through 7. But those 7 weeks last year, he had the 17th most reps in press out of everybody in the league. You'll see him play press man, off man. He can play match coverages. He's a good cloud corner. He needs to be better at the collision point and in undercutting in breakers. Digs, especially, are those 10-yard ins. He allows wide receivers to lean into him and kind of snap it off on those in-breaker routes, again, especially on digs. But similar to Asante Samuel Jr., he's got good spatial awareness and ability to drive and close on routes. You will watch him space routes evenly. He's reading the quarterback. He understands the route distribution. He's got the ability to read, again, those route distributions, but also collect guys coming off. He can pass off and collect. He's sound and responsible in coverage. You'll watch him, again, when he's in press, it's similar to Asante Samuel Jr., some more soft shoe press, some catch man. When he's playing off man, some scooch technique. He's got, fine feet, but he is a little bit stiff in his lower body. And I don't think it's necessarily because, I'm talking on both sides of my mouth here. I don't think it's necessarily because it's stiff. He just has longer legs. So I think he's fluid enough in his hips, but because he has longer legs, there is some kind of stiffness to his game there in the lower body, but not enough that it's a huge hindrance. He's good versus outbreaking routes. He's susceptible to double moves because he looks to jump routes on the break. He is an aggressive corner. And then, if he's running deep, if he's got guys running deep comebacks against him when he's in press man, it will take him multiple steps needed to break down. He always aims to stay over the top of routes, so that leaves him a bit susceptible there. He needs better hip sync. And again, I don't think it's because he's not fluid. I think it's just because he has longer legs, and it's harder for a dude with longer legs to kind of get that type of sync. If they are going to sign a corner in this offseason, those are kind of my picks from a high value standpoint. And also to tie it back into that Asante Samuel stat. So again, I mentioned from 2021 through 2024, forced incompletions. Asante Samuel Jr., despite only playing 4 games last year, was tied for the 23rd most forced incompletions in that time. Paulson Adebo, same time frame because he came to the league in 2021. So from 2021 through 2024, again, he only played 7 games last year. He has the 7th most forced incompletions since he's been in the league. 49 forced incompletions from 2021 through 2024. And again, that's with only playing 7 games last year. That is a 14.8% forced incompletion rate. So Samuel and Adebo, both of these guys are people that I am looking for to constrict airspace, to play some man coverage, to play some press, but also still be able to function in zone, both in terms of spot drop and in terms of match coverage stuff. That is the big thing. You can't, not to bag on Elam again, but tying it into the Kaiir Elam conversation, you can have hope to take, it's usually, you're not really going to take a zone corner and turn him into a man corner. That's usually a bit harder. But, if you want to kick the Kaiir Elam example, right? Man, look at this corner. He's got all these physical tools and traits and he can play man. We can coach him up to play zone. Maybe you can't. So I'm looking for guys in free agency who can play man, who can do those things to restrict airspace that I think this defense needs and that I personally want for this defense and just how I operate philosophically for defenses. But they also have to be able to still play zone. They need to have good spatial awareness. They need to have good zone awareness. They need to be able to play match coverage. They need to know how to read routes, read route distributions, not lose guys in their blind spots. They need to understand how to collect and how to pass off when in zone, be able to play match, all of these things, understand rules, communicate, be smart, be able to play fast physically and mentally, in addition to the man coverage stuff. You can't just look for a guy, well, let's just get this guy who's big, long, and fast and have him play man coverage. 1, that doesn't just work. Man coverage is hard. 2, you're still going to end up playing zone. No team, I shouldn't say no, but most teams are not going to be, predominantly man coverage playing teams. And the Bills are one of them. They're still going to play a lot of zone. I expect them to play more man, but these corners are a move in the direction of being able to play man more successfully, being able to play press more successfully, and not losing the ability to play zone. So it's kind of a win-win-win across the board. The only hindrance, again, is going to be the cost. With some of the concerns with Samuel and the injury last year, with some of the concerns with Adebo coming back from that broken femur, I do think there are an opportunity for both of those guys to have their price tag knocked down a little bit. It just depends on how much are they going to cost. Are they really going to get those market value projections? Are they going to sign 11 or 12, $1 million a year deals, or is it going to be less? Is it a 1 year? Is it a 2 year? Is it 3 to 4 years? Or do they cash in, or do they sign some prove it deals or go somewhere to win and then try and bag in, the following year? The cost is really the only thing that hinders me from these guys. If they were to sign Samuel or Adebo, I would still like them to go corner probably early day 3 with one of their 4th round picks. But if someone dropped to 30, again, I know it's kind of, adding on too much, but if someone dropped to 30 or someone's there in the 2nd round, I would not be opposed to going with another corner, especially if they take Samuel. But I think these are the guys that are kind of towards the higher end of the market. I know people throwing out, DJ Reed or Charvarius Ward or Carlton Davis, kind of what that market looks like for those guys. I think those guys are going to be too rich for the Bills' blood. This would be kind of the splash at corner that I could see them going for. Realistically, like I mentioned earlier, I do think it'll be someone towards the bottom end from a cost perspective, more like a Benjamin St. Juste, and then you take a corner in round 1 or round 2 and you let them compete and go from there. But I really do like Samuel and Adebo just because of the boxes they tick and they check. Let's go back. Alex says, what can you tell me about DJ Jones? Why would it be a good addition to the defense? I'm not trying to be that guy, but I led off with DJ Jones in this episode. So if you want to go to around like the 10-minute mark, I spoke on him for like 7-8 minutes for everything that he does and what he offers. What? David says, yes, I forgot about Adebo. Loved him coming out of Stanford. Yeah, I remember him coming out. Same. And I was like, oh, that's cool that he went to the Saints and he had a couple really, really, really good years. Seeing some comments. Charles said, I watched Gabe Davis cook Adebo when they played in college. It was awesome. Nikki says, am I the only one who watched, Talanoa Hufanga, especially with how often Rap is injured? I really love Hufanga. I don't know what the fit is in the defense, given how he plays and how Bishop plays or what the pairing is, but I love him as just an individual player. I liked him coming out of college too. Charles says free agency should be after the draft. Yeah, you know what? I've heard some people say that, and I'm not against it. I do like using free agency as the way to kind of, fill in the cracks a little bit and then use the draft to elevate that. But I understand your sentiment there and your feelings there on it. I'm not completely against that. Number 7 for me on this list, John Cominsky, edge from the Detroit Lions. Another person who I think can be somewhat cost-effective. Cominsky is a move in the current archetype of what the Bills like in their defensive ends / edges and the defensive line in general. So he tore his MCL in camp last year, 2024, missed all of 2024, should be fine coming back in here. Big thing with him is what he is as a defensive lineman. He's a bigger bodied edge. Used really in Detroit's system when he was playing as kind of like more of a 4-eye, like a defensive end in an odd front type of system. But you would watch him get flexed out to edge, and he has the ability to work out there, mainly for the Bills, because when he rushes, he is a pocket compressor. He can compress the pocket from the outside. He can drive tackles into the backfield, but he does have enough athleticism to kind of make some plays aside from that. And then the Lions would kick him inside on known passing downs and situations and let him just bull rush centers and guards and just go through them. There are most of his best reps are on third downs, and he's just pinning his ears back and running through guards and running through centers and driving them back into the quarterback slaps. That's what his move is. He is a pocket compressor. He's a speed to power guy. You will literally watch him on the snap, like load up and drive into your offensive lineman back. He's got a good enough get off in 2023. Again, he didn't play in 2024, but in 2023, he had a 0.97 get off. That was around the same time as Danielle Hunter, Nnamdi Madubuike, Kenny Clark, and Christian Wilkins. He has some moves aside from the compression, push-pull, push-to-rip, and a long arm. He's got a good motor, really hustles, a lot of relentless reps, good hand usage as well, both in terms of pop and placement. Versus the run, he uses his hands to establish first touch, and he works to extend while reading the running back's track, and then he'll shed and make the play. Not a ton of dip, not a ton of bend, but he's not unathletic. He, again, though, is in that mold of kind of what the Bills have used at their archetype at edge. So I had Dante Fowler up there earlier as number 2. I had Michael Hoecht as 4. Those guys are more of the departure. Cominsky is more of in the same vein. Like if you keep this room as is, and it's Groot and Epinesa and Vaughn and Solomon, you sign Cominsky, and then he becomes kind of like the Dwan Smoot player from last year. A little more upside for me, though. And you get someone who can compress and he's a much better run defender, I should say, than Dwan Smoot. So you get somebody who can compress the pocket from the outside, who can line up and kick inside on known passing downs and distances, but he plays the run really well. He adds to the run defending value of the edge grouping and then the ability to rush the passer from the inside on third downs. And again, he's in that pocket compression archetype mold that the team has used and loved really since Bean and McDermott took over. So he's another guy, again, is cost effective as well. Projected at 2.5 average annual value. I feel like he'll probably get somewhere around there, maybe even gets less because he's coming off that torn MCL. He's a really solid rotational dude. I would like a higher level person at edge. I would like I mentioned with Fowler, I want a mercenary or an assassin known quantity as a pass rusher, but Cominsky, I think, is a really nice kind of edge 3, edge 4 versatile piece who can be lined up in a bunch of spots on the defensive line, who can be used in a multitude of ways, plays the run, can compress the pocket and go through dudes. I think he gives you just, again, more sandpaper and grit with some athleticism, but a lot of sandpaper and grit and some value at multiple spots for a pretty good cost. Again, I want more of the mercenary or assassin. This pick is more, let's go with the trends we've seen for years. Let's think about the money and the trends and the archetype. Let's put those two things together. And that's where you get John Cominsky. But I've liked this tape really since, when did Vaughn tear his ACL? 2022? 2023? I don't remember. Everything kind of blurs together. Whatever year the Bills played the Lions on Thanksgiving, I was watching Lions tape getting ready for that game, and Cominsky just kept flashing and making plays. So he's somebody I've kept my eye on for a couple of years. I felt bad for him that he tore his MCL in camp, but I feel, which is also kind of like a bad omen for the Lions defense where everybody was hurt for like the entirety of the year. So it just really started with Cominsky and kind of went from there, but I like Cominsky. And again, cost effective, can wear a lot of hats on that line. Thank you, Zach. Zach in the comments says 2022. Yeah, I like Cominsky. I like what he offers. I like the versatility. I like the physicality. I like the tenacity. I like the ability to push the pocket, go speed to power, and also play the run and do some things and still have a little bit of athleticism. Walter says, what are your thoughts on Justin Simmons? He seems to me to be the perfect blend of still playing at a high level, plus being a veteran, shouldn't break the bank. In my opinion, he'd give us the most stability of any option in free agency. I really wanted Justin Simmons last year. I have not watched any Falcons defense tape from last year and paid too much attention to Simmons. So I don't know what he was in 2024. I will say I was surprised that he signed for as much as he did as a free agent. I think he came off of, I don't know why I'm saying like I have to question it. Like I can't just go look it up right now. I thought it was like a 1 year, $5 million deal with the Falcons late in the offseason. Oh no, it was 1 year, 7.5 million with the Falcons late. Man, I have to see what he still offers from a range perspective. But if you're thinking of a guy who, again, can play on the back end, who understands coverage, who knows leverage, who knows responsibility, he ticks a lot of boxes from that free safety post, center field type of safety, single high safety to pair with a Bishop or a Rapp. I wouldn't be opposed to him coming in on like a 1 year, $5 million deal and being safety 3. I would actually really, really, really love that. I do agree with you. I think you give the Bills a lot of stability, especially from the neck up. I just don't know what he has physically and what he looked like in Atlanta. Because I didn't watch too much of their tape this past year with what they were. I actually watched some of their offense, but didn't watch some of the defense. So I don't know what he really offered too much. But in theory, I like it. I still found it weird. I thought he would kind of not cash in, but sign like a 2 year, $16 million deal with someone last year. And he signed with the Falcons late for 1 year, $7.5 million. So I think that's interesting. If they could get him, maybe add him to the competition, or if it's like a safety 3 type of scenario that he'd be involved in. But, or I really like the idea of Cole Bishop being the dime linebacker on third downs. And then maybe Justin Simmons is coming on the field and it's Rapp, Simmons, and Bishop on third downs. I don't know how much you pay for that, what the rotation looks like, yada, yada. But I like the idea. I just don't know what the practical application looks like because I haven't watched Falcons defense tape from last year, but I could take a peek. Good comment, Walter. Appreciate you for that. All right. This next one is for, I forget who asked me earlier. I thought it was Charles. Who asked me? Yeah, it was Charles. Charles asked if there are any wide receivers on the list. There are wide receivers on the list. Number 8 for me is Demarcus Robinson, receiver from the Los Angeles Rams. I want to preface this and say something first, though. I want Matt Collins back. I'm not including Bills free agents on this list. I would like Matt Collins back. Oh, appreciate you, Walter. Of course. I appreciate the question, Walter. And yeah, I'm sorry Walter said that's fair. Thanks. But yeah, so I appreciate you for that. And I like the question. I wish I had the exact answer, but I don't want to talk out of my ass and be like, oh yeah, I think this on Justin Simmons. I think too many people talk out of their ass when they actually haven't watched and don't understand what a player actually is or what evaluation is or what scheme and structure actually is. So I don't want to just talk and mislead you, but I will go back and take a peek at that. That's a fair question. But yeah, I appreciate the question. Thank you for being here and thank you for the thanks. Demarcus Robinson. I want to preface this by saying I want Matt Collins back. I loved what he was last year. Again, obviously more of a depth receiver. He's not a number 1. He's not a number 2. He is from a snap share perspective, I guess, like as a blocker, and he can function and spread a little bit. He was the Bills' cover 0 answer before they brought Amari Cooper in. I like Matt Collins. If you bring back Matt Collins and you sign Demarcus Robinson, you're still not addressing the biggest concerns that I have in this wide receiver room, which are more juice, more vertical presence, more athleticism, more shake, more wiggle, something, right? But I just like Demarcus Robinson. I have for the past couple of seasons. The biggest thing for me with Demarcus Robinson is, and these are some pieces I've talked about, there are 2 things I want more of in this Bills wide receiver room. I want juice athleticism, speed. I want a field stretcher, right? Somebody who can push vertical, take the top off the defense, run those for the love of the game routes just to pull coverage, or who actually have the juice to beat guys vertically one-on-one and get open downfield. So I would like that. Or someone who can win with route running and separate as a route runner. Now, you don't have to have juice and speed to separate via route running. I think one of the biggest, things that get conflated is that in order to have separation, you need speed. It does help, but route running is such a huge piece. And when I say route running, I mean everything, like your release, how you pace your routes, how you run your stems, your body language, your eyes, your deception. Like Adam Thielen separates year after year, and he's never been the fastest dude, but he's just such a technician as a route runner, and he knows how to separate. Demarcus Robinson is in that category, different style than Thielen, but in terms of guy who is not a burner, who is not this ultra fast person, but he's so precise with his route running, and he operates with such specificity in his body movements, in his footwork, in his stems, in a variety of routes, that he's somebody who I would add to this team. If you need confirmation of that, watch. Actually, I put a tweet out a couple weeks ago and a post on Blue Sky, same thing. The touchdowns that he had this past year in the low red zone against Philly, against the Saints, against the Packers, I think there was 4 of them. He runs this, it's essentially just one stab inside, and he runs a little arrow route to the flat in the low red zone. It's usually from anywhere from like the 2 or the 3 yard line. And he just creates so much separation because on the snap, it's this stab that he sells with momentum, with body language, with flow, and just bang. And he snaps it right off, and he's out on the arrow route, and he's wide open in the flat, and Stafford hits him a bunch. The one against the Saints is from the slot. The other 3 are just from him as the outside to the right of the formation. And tight to the formation, though, condensed, so that way he can operate for the space outside. And just what he's able to do as a route runner, the technicality and the precision that he operates with as a route runner is something that I'm very, very, very attracted to and have been for years. And again, especially in the low red zone, even just that, somebody who can consistently win in the low red zone, who can just give another option, because you're going to get man coverage down in and around the goal line because you have Josh Allen. And maybe you don't care too much because you're like, we're going to spam Josh Allen and he'll get in from inside the 5. But it's nice to have a dude that can win so consistently outside in those one-on-ones as another option down there in that red zone, especially if you pair it with Keon Coleman, the running game in general, and Josh Allen. Again, even though he isn't a burner and he isn't a big deep threat, he still can get vertical because he is a crafty route runner, because he understands how to pace his routes. He understands releases. He understands stem work. This is someone who I think exhibits a lot of those traits of kind of like the true X, the ability to get off press, the ability to go up, high point the football, bring it down. He can make contested catches. He can separate. He can run a variety of routes in the route tree. He's somebody who, again, I think ticks a lot of the boxes that you are looking for in that true type of X wide receiver, that kind of guy. 6'1", 202 pounds. He doesn't have that speed. He's not a burner. He's not going to threaten you vertically all the time. Just, like we can't cover this guy one-on-one because of how fast he is. But he can still get over the top and win with physicality, or separate on the release, fool you in the stem, and get vertical. He's coming off of a 1-year, $4 million deal with the Rams. I think he could be had for something similar. He's going into his age 31 season. He's somebody who I think just increases the technicality in the wide receiver room. Gives you the route running ability, some juice, obviously not a ton, proven veteran ability, played with Mahomes with the Chiefs, played with Stafford and McVay in the Rams. This is a smart dude who understands systems and concepts. He blocks. He can win in the red zone. He's going to add to the leadership and the mental side of the game in the wide receiver room. And then again, I think he operates in that niche role of being a separator and can win, some one-on-ones and win you some battles there. He understands pacing. He understands concepts and spacing, I should say, in addition to pacing. Also, really good, successful production off of play action last year. Just smart, knows how to find space, and operates in a variety of ways that I think the Bills would need for him. Another guy, so honorable mention to Charles, and I think a couple comments came in for this. Charles said, check out Josh Palmer, good separation EPA numbers last year. He can be that vertical threat. We talked about him in the film room last week. Josh Palmer and Noah Brown are two of my honorable mentions in terms of guys who have a little bit of a route running ability, a little bit of some size, a little bit of some athleticism or some, physicality after the catch. Guys who just tick different boxes and have skill set pieces in different buckets. Overall, those are two of my honorable mentions. Claus is the same thing. I'm a Josh Palmer guy, have been since the University of Tennessee. I like De'Ami Brown, but those two playoff games scare me. He's going to get overpaid. Yep, we spoke about De'Ami Brown last week. Those are the wide receivers that I think the Bills need to operate with. Caleb says thoughts on Tutu Atwell. We talked about Tutu Atwell last week, and I would say, where is this comment? Dex from earlier says, these are the free agent wide receivers I want the Bills to look at. Tutu Atwell, De'Ami Brown, Demarcus Robinson, Josh Palmer, Justin Watson, and Noah Brown. All cheap, good options. I feel like everybody here is trolling me, but these are, or maybe not, but like these are who all of these receivers Eric and I talked about last week in the film room, and for a variety of reasons. Guys who can separate with speed, route running, size, yards after catch, work underneath, block, perform a variety of functions and roles. Watson was one who I threw out there, just a big bodied dude who can block, but also get vertical and has done that in Kansas City for several years. Watson's a good guy as well. Yeah, good comment there. Caleb says, again, to go back there, thoughts on Tutu Atwell. I like Tutu. I like the gadget aspect of him. Somebody who you can, hit a quick little bubble to or a little RPO route, and all of a sudden you hit him on a glance or you hit him on an RPO bubble, or you take advantage of the numbers outside. And if it's you got 3 and they got 2, man. My only thing with him is again, so I like Tutu. I like one, even though he's a smaller guy, he is diminutive in his stature. He is a willing blocker, and he blocks better than he gets credit for. You have to with the Rams. They expect every receiver to block like Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. That's just how they operate. But I like him as just another, you're rounding out the basketball lineup of the room. I don't think Tutu Atwell becomes like, I just don't know how many snaps he sees, right? I don't know what his snap share usage or rate looks like. So it's kind of that idea of, if you're putting him on the field, is he just going deep? Is he going short? If he's on the field, is the ball going to him? Like, are you kind of siloing yourself and building in some tendency? But I do like his skill set. I do think his skill set is needed on this team. I wish it came in an overall package. I wish you could put Tutu Atwell's speed into Demarcus Robinson's body, and I would love that. But even though he is kind of a more of a niche player, I like the idea of his skill set and how he can be used. I wish it came in a package with other things to make him more of a complete player and not have to. I want to round out the basketball lineup in the wide receiver room, but I don't want to have to do it with so many players. I don't want to have 6 guys and it's like, this guy is this guy is that. I'd like to have some more overlap for some of the more important skill set pieces, but I do think what he brings is not present currently in the Bills lineup at wide receiver, and I wouldn't mind that. David says, how about Hollywood Brown? I talked about him last week in the film room. I'm out on Hollywood Brown. I was really disappointed with just how he operates. Let me go pull up my notes. He's got the speed to stretch the field and run past defenders, but his small stature and frame hinders his contested catchability and ability to play through contact. He's got long legs, not much wiggle or shake to his game. He lacks deception in his routes, both in the break and in the stem. He's a one-gear route runner, not much pacing to his routes. He does have some of that long speed still to stretch the field, but he lacks sharpness and precision in his routes. He struggles versus physicality, both true press or reroutes in his stems, and he has minimal hip sync. So flexibility in his lower body. I did not like his tape from 2024 too much. Again, he was hurt, so he didn't have a ton of it. I went back to 2023, watched what he did with Arizona. I think he's purely a field stretcher. I don't think he's as like I would rather give that his money to Tutu Atwell than I would Hollywood Brown. That's how I feel. I just don't. I think he's really living off the name more than anything else. And maybe I don't know. There was a reason why he's been down the past couple of years. And I will say I'm not looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the tape. Like he did get open in Arizona, and their QB situation in 2023 just didn't get him the ball when he was getting open. But I mean, if he wants to come here on like a 1-year, $3 or $4 million deal, I don't mind it. But he's smaller dude. He's not going to block like you need him to. He's really just a one-trick pony, and I think that one trick is somewhat diminished. So I'm not a huge fan. That's kind of my issue. Walter says, please note at Tutu Atwell, we've tried this type of wide receiver just about every year to no success. If McVay couldn't maximize him in 4 years, I'm not going to expect Brady to be able to. I think McVay started to use him well these past couple of years, though. And again, Tutu in LA was a supporting cast guy. It was Puka and it was Cup, and then it was Robinson, and then it was Tutu Atwell. So like him performing as your wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4, that's what I'm looking at him for. I'm not looking for him to be this, wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. I'm looking for him to be an additive to the lineup, like a 6-man guy coming off the bench who can do a variety of things for you and offers you things that you don't have. There is no wide receiver they have with that level of juice and shake at the spot who can stretch the field, but also be a problem underneath and shake guys underneath and create his own space and do that kind of stuff, but both in the route and, after the catch a little bit. But again, the size is a concern. How much is he going to cost then? And again, you're adding him to the rotation, not necessarily making him kind of a focus guy. RJ says, I don't think they should look at any mid-level or lower wide receivers. They need a wide receiver 1 or at least a wide receiver 2. Unfortunately, they are severely difficult to come by. Plus, this draft, the wide receiver class isn't great. I agree with you. My only issue is if they don't have a wide receiver that can either stretch the field with speed or has some of those true X capabilities, like the ability to win on one, win on the outside, win in your stem, or win on your release, or win in the break, they're going to struggle a little bit. I do think, and again, it was early in the year, so we'll see. I think you will see more struggles like they had against the Texans and Ravens if they don't have a true guy on the outside who can win in some form or fashion, whether it's over the top or just winning one-on-one. If they don't have somebody who allows the outside and above to open up a little bit, they're going to struggle. We saw what the Texans and the Ravens did, which was if you've got athletic or good corners, we're just going to play single high. We're going to play man coverage. We'll play cover 1, single high, obviously. We'll play cover 1, single high man. We'll play cover 3, single high zone, because we're not scared of anybody beating us one-on-one on the outside. We're going to flood bodies in between the numbers to take away Kincaid and Shakir and what Allen wants to do there. And we're going to dare you to beat us on the outside or beat us over the top, because we don't think you have the speed to beat us over the top, and we don't think you have the ability to beat us one-on-one in the stems and one-on-one and in those isolated situations. Cooper alleviated that a bit, and that's a problem if you can't succeed in those areas. I should backtrack a minute, because not only is that a struggle for the pass game, but the more teams feel comfortable just leaving a single high safety and crowding, in between the hashes, in between the numbers, crowding the box, then your run game is going to start to struggle, because now teams are just loading up in the box against you. The run game will get a bit more sluggish. All these problems compound. So I agree. I do think they need a true wide receiver 1 or a high-end wide receiver 2. The issue is, like you said, those are severely difficult to come by. So unless you're grabbing T. Higgins or you're getting Tet McMillan or something like that, or signing Devontae Adams, depending on how you feel, I think it's harder to come by just based on cost and based on the resources you have to allocate to get a true 1 or a high end 2, right? It either costs money or it costs significant draft capital. I don't think the Bills are in the position to do either, given their needs on defense and what their team looks like currently. But I do think they need a speed element or a route running, some semblance of a true X element to open things up and prevent them from being able to be isolated and be siloed. That's kind of my thought with that. Things will compound. The running game is what makes this team go. But if they can't have guys who can win one-on-one, if they don't have guys who can beat man coverage or beat one-on-one in zone, again, even if it's cover 3 and it's zone coverage on the outside, one-on-one, it's still essentially kind of playing out like man. If you don't have those guys who can win at the release or win in the stem or win on the break or threaten vertically or have some combination of those, everything starts to get tight. Everything starts to get compounded a little bit, and then that becomes a problem, and it makes things harder overall for the offense. That's kind of like my biggest concern. And again, not every team will be able to give them those problems, but it kind of trickles down a little bit. And especially with the whole season of tape, you had this really good offense that kind of bullied a lot of teams last year and beat them in a lot of ways. Now you got a full season's worth of tape. Teams are going to course correct. You need to be able to course correct. You need to be able to have some answers to the questions that defenses are going to pose. And something else I've talked about all throughout last year, the in-structure passing game struggled more than was talked about. And I think that was due to the lack of separators, either in terms of route running or in terms of speed. So you need some semblance of an element. And again, ideally, it comes in a true 1 or a high end 2. If you can't get that, you need smatterings of it in some way. That's, again, why my wish list here, or rankings here, priority here has Demarcus Robinson at 8, because even though he doesn't have that vertical stretch speed ability, he's got some of those true X capabilities: the size, the frame, the ability to win on the release, win in the routes, win in the stem, separate, win with precision. He offers you that, and he can block a little bit as well. That's those are my thoughts there. But good question. Court Jester says Christian Kirk. I think he's just going to be too expensive. I like him as a player. I just think he's going to be too expensive. Dexy says, I think it might have been your vid I saw talking about them guys. I've been telling other Bills fans about that list, and it's opened their eyes because they were just looking at Hollywood. Thank you very much. I appreciate you using some word of mouth to talk about the channel and the brand. Thank you very much. That's awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of people were kind of throwing Hollywood, and I was really disappointed in his tape. Nikki says, I still like this offense with Amari Cooper. If we can somehow get him back for 10 mil or less, what he adds, even in mentorship for Coleman, his late hands and ability to get open is still there. It is. He just doesn't have the speed anymore. It depends on what he's going to cost. I thought he helped and opened up the offense last year. It depends on what he costs. If it's anywhere around 10, I am out. If it's 6, if it's 7, I'm willing to have that conversation. Nathan says, crap, I commented on the wrong video. Nathan says Darius Slayton. I think Slayton's going to cost a bit too much on the open market. I do like the speed that he has, but I'll read my notes because I did him in the film room last week. He's adept at working to corners, blind spots to run them off on deep hitches. Speed is obviously an influence. He's a vertical stem runner. He'll push outside with pace and snap it off in roughly 4 to 5 steps. His deep comeback is his best route. He'll sell vertical, which is nice. Inefficient movement at the top of his routes, digs and some hitches, and in his stems, he has more flailing movement / motion than coordinated deception. 90% of his routes are hitches, slants, or nines. He has long speed, but not a lot of suddenness or sharpness to his movements. He's fine and comfortable versus press. Not a ball winner. Does not maximize his catch radius or win at the catch point. Decent ball tracking. 10.7 career drop rate and a season high 15.2% drop rate in 2024. He has 7 drops. His yards per reception last year were 19.7, which was 13th for qualifying receivers and 14th overall. He had a 0.66 EPA per target last year, which was 16th for qualified wide receivers and 21st overall. All of those are off of play action. And then overall yards per reception, 17th out of 152 qualifying players, and air yards per target, 11th out of 152. I think he's going to get a little bit paid on the open market because he's got really good size and length and wingspan and hand size. Again, he doesn't play to that size and frame, but that with the speed, I think will cost a little bit more and make teams want to invest in him a little bit more. I just think he's going to cost too much. Troy says, what about Keon? I like Keon. I just think we're still very much in the trajectory of Keon, and that's a toss-up. Like, what is Keon going to be? We don't know. We don't know what year 2 Keon looks like. He could look exactly like he did this year in year 1. He could be much improved. He could be marginally improved. In theory, could be worse. Like, we just don't know. My biggest thing with Keon, and I've continued to say it a lot, like, I had him as my wide receiver 9 last year coming out of the draft, but I thought he had arguably the most varied set of outcomes of any receiver in the class. If you told me he was a wide receiver 2 legitimately at the end of his rookie contract, I believe you. If you told me he was a low-end wide receiver 1, I believe it. If you told me he was out of the league, I believe it. If you told me he was going to be a career 1-year contract guy into his 30s because different teams kept thinking they could finally be the ones to tap into his skill set, I would believe you. I just think because of how raw he is and unpolished as a player, there is a lot of room for variability in what or who he becomes as a player. And I just don't think you can bank on any known quantity of year 2 Keon, which is annoying for the group, right? It would be nice to have more of a known quantity in him, again, which can be good or bad, right? He could surpass expectations. He could fall below them. Again, like I mentioned with this, he could be the exact same player in year 2, or he could be significantly better, or he could be marginally better. Like it's really kind of who knows at this point. What else? Anything? Mr. Spunky Llama says prayer circle for Matthew Golden at 30. Kay Amori said I was out. I missed the episode. Did I miss the Javon Holland segment? I didn't do Javon Holland in this one just because I think he's going to cost way too much. I think he's out of splurge territory and realistic splash territory, but I would sign up for Javon Holland in a heartbeat, which is part of the reason why I would sign up for Malachi Starks at pick 30. But I appreciate you knowing who I am as a person. Appreciate you, Troy. Troy says, thanks, and go Bills. Go Bills. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Joe says, as far as the draft, are there any non-first round options that you think can help them against man and be productive? First few that come to mind are Higgins, Noel, Royals, and Horton. I really like Torrey Horton from Colorado State. He's somebody I've had my eye on for a couple of years. I haven't watched tape on Royals. I like Noel and I like Higgins from broadcast in the season just because I watched a bunch of Iowa State. I have not watched tape on Higgins or Noel. I haven't done wide receivers yet in any. I've done Matthew Golden at wide receiver as of now. And I have a couple others that I'm going to do before the film room tomorrow, but I haven't dived into wide receivers too much at this point. Noel, I think, is more slot juice speed guy, which definitely would help because his speed is real and his after the catch ability is real. Higgins, I'm really interested because I think Higgins doesn't have the juice, but I think he's somebody who offers you some of that true X skill set. If you can line him up outside, he can bully dudes, he can body guys, he can dunk on guys a little bit, but I also think his route running is a little bit better than he gets credit for. He can win on in-breakers. He's not just a jump ball kind of contested catch target kind of guy. So yeah, the two Iowa State dudes are in the forefront of my mind. I obviously will be watching them. And then I'll get through Royals and Horton as well. But Horton's a dude who banged up last year, but his 2023 and 2022 were super productive. He also offers you some punt return value as well, which is nice. Slayton is going to cost a lot of money. Yep, that's fair. A lot of thoughts there. Yeah, so it's kind of just overall with my list here. It was based on cost effectiveness. It was based on who can fit a need, whether it's large scale, whether it's niche, and everything again tied into relative cost. My value and hope for free agency is to kind of set the table so they truly can. And I know everybody says this, but I really want them to go best player available at 30 because I think it really could be anyone. Like the best player available at 30 could be a wide receiver. It could be a corner. It could be a defensive tackle. It could be an edge. It could be a safety. Safety isn't the biggest need, right? I think Rapp and Bishop are fine. I've talked about them a ton individually and also why I don't really like them as a pair and why I have questions about it. But it's not a huge need. But if Malachi Starks is there at 30, I have no problem taking Malachi Starks. But if they go, there's a multitude of defensive tackles that I could take at 30. There's a multitude of edges. There's a multitude of corners. I shouldn't say multitude. There's some corners I would take at 30. There's a couple receivers who I would take at 30 if they somehow fell. I just want the Bills to be set up to a spot where to do two things, where they can go best player available in the draft, but also they are maximizing the known quantity pieces at positions of need in free agency. And that is why, again, if we go through my list, number 1, DJ Jones, number 2, Dante Fowler, number 3, Roy Lopez. Let me go with positions. Number 1, DJ Jones, defensive tackle. Number 2, Dante Fowler, edge. Number 3, Roy Lopez, defensive tackle. Number 4, Michael Hoecht, edge. Number 5, Asante Samuel Jr., corner. Number 6, Paulson Adebo, corner. Number 7, John Cominsky, edge. And number 8, Demarcus Robinson, wide receiver. Give me some known quantities in free agency to round out the roster and fill needs, but at the same time, give you the opportunity to draft best player available at your positions of need with your first 3 picks. Having, 3 picks in the top, 62 or whatever it is, in a deep draft where there's a lot of value on day 2 is awesome. I also wouldn't be opposed. I don't know if anybody's going to yell at me or not for this like they did last year. I would not be opposed to the Bills trading out of 30 and trading into like the mid or high 30s and acquiring another second round pick or like a day or a round 3 pick. That's how deep I think the first 2 days are at various spots. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Also, in case anybody cares or anybody asks, I'm not opposed to trading James Cook if you can get a day 2 pick. If you can get a round 3 pick back for James Cook, again, you create a hole that you essentially have to address right away, either in free agency or in the draft, but I'm not completely opposed to it. And there are some really good running backs that you could pair with Ray Davis in this class. Take one of them, reset your running back contract clock, get some effectiveness on top of it. I think that's something that could be done. But overall, Thoughts in this free agency episode? Yeah, it's based on cost effectiveness. It's back on, or built on, I should say, need, schematic fit, the film, the metrics, a lot of film, I should say, and a lot of metrics. And then all of it, again, tied relative to cost. But I do think the focus on this team right now needs to be the defensive line, starting with defensive tackle, then going to edge, then you go to corner, then you go to receiver. That is what this team needs right now. It's unfortunate that Nathan says Cook for the 3 is nonsense. I'm not saying it would happen. I'm saying if you could get that, I'm fine with it. I don't think you're going to get that, but if they could get it, I would take it. Oh, exactly, Walter. Walter says you would trade the best. Oh, I forgot how adamant you are about Cook. You would trade the best non-Allen offensive player being ever drafted in hopes of what exactly? Picks are only nice if you hit on them. Agreed. My thought is with the offensive line and the system that they have, a combination of another high-value running back would be able to get the job done in another way. And Cook's pass protection stuff is still a little questionable on third downs, and it's really just the monetary value that he's going to ask for as a free agent. Now, again, that doesn't mean you have to jettison him now. The only way I'm even trading Cook is if the relationship has soured to the point that they think it's going to be a problem on or off the field within the team, or they just get some amazing value, like someone offers them a 2 or a 3, and they're like, okay, we'll do this, and then they think they can get something out of it. I'm not trading Cook unless the value is there for what you are getting in return. I'm just saying I'm not opposed to the idea of if they can get a 2 or a 3, I'm not opposed to trading him. I think he had a tremendous year last year. I'm not basing that on the touchdowns. I think touchdowns are kind of an arbitrary way to justify someone's value in general, but his speed and juice mattered a lot. He added a lot of physicality to his game, his ability to fall forward and kind of run through shoulders last year and run through DBs, but also add some physicality against some defensive linemen. I don't know how many runs that he made last year just because he made those on his own, whether it was on the duo runs where he's beating a corner to the edge or he's beating a defensive lineman and kind of making things happen on his own. I think his skill set is very important to the offense. I just don't think they're going to pay him what he wants, which again is fine. Play out your rookie contract, and if you go elsewhere, kind of go forth and prosper. But I'm not getting rid of him again unless the value is there, or if the relationship is sour to the point where you feel like you need to get rid of him. I'm a big fan of James Cook. I just don't think he's going to get what he wants from the Bills. I don't know if he's going to get it in general, but kind of go from there. Nathan says, do Saquon or Henry pass block? Saquon most definitely does, without a shadow of a doubt. Saquon is on the field for all 3 downs and can run, can receive, and pass block like crazy. Henry necessarily not so much, but I mean, Henry has been just such a monster as an individual runner that I think you kind of get that less. But Saquon, absolutely. Walter says, I feel the team's value is more important than the league value. If the Lions, Ravens, Eagles cared about the league, thought about running back, they would never have the offenses they have. True, but signing Saquon to that deal in free agents, the way the Eagles team was already set up, Saquon kind of put them over the hump. I'm not opposed to paying a running back. It's different of how your team is built. Saquon put the Eagles over the top. Their offensive line was amazing. The receivers they have, the quarterback they have, the defense they have. He was kind of like the Von Miller move the Bills thought that they were getting, where that was the last drop to kind of make everything overflow and pop, right? Ravens, I think a similar situation. You've got Lamar, you've got this mauling offense. Henry is a tremendous fit for it, and we saw that kind of jump. The Lions, I think, is a bit different as well, just because schematically how they operate. I also think Gibbs is just on another planet in terms of a runner with what he is. Again, I really like Cook. I just don't think he's in the same conversation as Gibbs. Gibbs is an absolute monster and a freak as a runner, just with Cook is fast. I don't know what Gibbs is Sonic, like the Sonic and Knuckles, name for him in Montgomery is super legit. Walter says, I get your point. I just feel like we're the caliber of team where we create the standards in terms of how we operate instead of following the league. No, and I think that's fair. So I say it like this too, right? The run scheme they have with the line that they have, with Cromer as coach, with Josh Allen, with the condensed formations and Brady, I think Cook definitely plays above the stupid camera. Come on, come back in focus. I move too much, and then the camera tries to follow me and gets out of focus. It'll come back. I think there are times where Cook played above the scheme and made things happen, where he made the offense right, even when they were potentially wrong. But I think the offense does so much to help him that, that's good. Paisan says, and James Cook is Shadow if Sonic is Gibbs. That's really good. I like that. I just think you could operate with a different back. Like if they got Travion Henderson, for example, I'm not saying he's Cook. And again, prospects are not a guarantee. I said that to lead off the show. It's not like you can it's not a like for like. It's not a replacement. I just think you could mitigate that loss while helping yourself get financial flexibility in some way because of what Cook's contract has jumped up to this offseason because of all the little additives of making the Pro Bowl. So his cap hit is around like $5 million this year. Again, I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying I'm not opposed to it. If you can guarantee me they can get a 2 or a 3, which I don't really think they would get anyway, but I wouldn't be opposed to that. And again, even just considering that, it has to get to the point of the relationship has to have soured. I like Cook. I like his fit for the offense. I really do think he wants to get super paid. And I do think he's good, but I don't think he's worth that kind of contract that he's looking for. But which again, doesn't mean you have to get rid of him now. Play out the rest of your rookie deal. And if you want to go sign somewhere else as a free agent in another year or whatever, go ahead, do your thing. Mary says, trade Cook to the Cowboys for Parsons. If only it were that simple. It's only that. What do you mean? Nathan said that's almost tempting, Mary. Hold on, Nathan. Nathan, you wouldn't trade James. I don't know if you're joking. You wouldn't trade James Cook to the Dallas Cowboys. If the trade was James Cook for Micah Parsons, Nathan, would you do that trade? I need to know this. Because you said that's almost tempting. I don't know if you said that sarcastically or you're saying that because you wouldn't do that deal. I really hope you're still here. I would like to know your response. Would you do James Cook for Micah Parsons? I would like to know that answer. Cameron says, who's the number one if Cook leaves? Right now, I guess it would be Ray Davis. But they would look to bring in another running back. You're either drafting a running back or you're signing one in free agency. Maybe it's Javonte Williams or something like that. Walter says, I would carry Cook on my back and deliver him for Parsons. Whoa, Nathan, what are we doing? Nathan says, I'd consider it and ruminate on it. That's to each their own. That's a hard yes. If the trade is James Cook for Micah Parsons, Nathan, that's a hard yes. Micah Parsons is one of the top 10 players in football, not even defensively, just football. Goodness. I feel like you're kind of trolling or playing a little bit, which is fair. And I like this. Joe says, ponder it, perhaps. Archie says, I would throw James Cook at Jerry Jones for that deal. I like Walter's answer. I would carry Cook on my back and to deliver him for Parsons. I like that. Mr. Spunky Llama says, realistically, what else would we have to offer with him to get Parsons? Oh, I don't even know. A lot. Picks. I don't even know if Cook is the starting point as a player. I mean, I know Jerry Jones values running backs, but I don't know if he values the type of running back that Cook is. Plus, Zach Martin just retired. Their offensive line has some questions. You'd have to offer a lot for Micah Parsons. A lot of picks. And then money on top of it to kind of give him the deal that he wants and the money that he has. So it would take a lot. Not even off the top of it. It would take a lot to get. Nathan says with bad knees for Micah Parsons. So that's fair. To each their own. Speaking of to each their own, One Pie Pizza should be in each and every one of your homes every week. The best pizza in Buffalo, New York. I don't say that because they sponsor the show. They sponsor the show because I think they are the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. Great sweet sauce pie, cup and char pepperoni. If you get different vegetables or different toppings, they chop them all up evenly. They sprinkle them evenly across the pie. So it's not just like big, chunks of different tastes in each bite. Everything is even and uniform. It's fantastic. They make their own homemade blue cheese. They have dessert options. They have actually really good salads. They do catering stuff. They make all these different kinds of mac and cheeses. Really good options from the folks at One Pie Pizza. And like I always say, they're really good people making really good food. And the reason I say they're really good people, all the different initiatives and drives that they do for the community and the city, partnering with Roswell to try and knock out cancer, Toys for Tots, partnering with the SPCA, partnering with the Alzheimer's Foundation, different, fundraisers and things that they take part in They're very charitable, and again, they make an amazing product with amazing taste. So if you want some pizza, go get yourself some One Pie Pizza. Online menu can be found in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you're listening to this show on. I'm going to throw up the banner that says Toodles, folks, because I'm going to start to say goodbye and wind down. You know what? I thought this was going to be like a 45-minute to 1 hour show. I should have known better. But this was a really good conversation at the end. I appreciate you folks. Thank you very much for being here. If you're still here live watching on YouTube, please, and thank you. If you have not already, please drop a like on this video. Likes are the lifeblood of these streams. If you have not already, please, and thank you. Drop a like on this video if you're watching here on YouTube, whether you're watching live now or watching on YouTube later. If you are listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's cool too. Please rate, review, subscribe to Disguise Coverage. If you're here on YouTube, turn on notifications for Disguise Coverage. On the podcasting apps and platforms, I know it sounds stupid or small, but if you did enjoy this, give a rating, a comment or stars, whatever it is. Those do help the show and the brand track and trend a lot. Or if you have on like real actual feedback, put it into the comments, put it in the podcasting app or the notes, whatever. I welcome all that. It means a lot more than you know. So whatever form or fashion your support comes in, I appreciate that. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about the show, about the brand. I like that comment earlier. I think it was from Dexy, who was saying, if they were telling people about the targets that we talked about in the film room and kind of open up to people who are just talking about Hollywood Brown. So word of mouth is how this brand started. So if you like the show, you like the channel, the brand, tell your family, friends, folks, loved ones about it. If you hated this show and thought it was terrible, tell your enemies about it and try and ruin their day by making them watch this show. Drop likes, ratings, reviews, subscriptions. Follow me on Twitter. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, at @pro__ant. Follow me on Blue Sky at @proant. No underscores there, just PROANT. If you have a question that I did not get to on the show, I apologize. Get at me on Twitter or get at me on Blue Sky. I will answer it there, or put it into the comments on YouTube and I will answer it post episode. Apologies for not getting everything live there. Great. Thank you for the kind words coming into the chat now. Appreciate you folks. And yeah, really good banter and back and forth. I like the thoughts, the juices that are flowing around this team and where we are in the offseason. And next week at this time, we will have some actual free agency to talk about, positively or negatively. We will see. Starts next Monday, a little afternoon is when the news starts dropping. Things become official next Wednesday, but we'll talk about anything and everything that has developed next Tuesday, live, 9 p.m. Eastern, here again on Disguise Coverage. Join myself and Eric tomorrow in the film room. Until then, whether I see you in the film room or whether I see you next week on Disguise Coverage, I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. I'll see you when I see you. Godspeed. Thank you very much for whatever form or fashion your support comes in. I greatly appreciate it. It means more than you know. And as always, go Bills.